so we'll start with our sponsor. Daf Yomi for the month is sponsored by Duvi and Tehila Catcher. B'schus Refuah Shlema for Ephraim Ben Shifra, and Daf Yomi for the week is sponsored by Brian and Michelle Schiffman, Le'ilui Nishmas Shaya Ben Yosef, which is Mr. Charles Schiffman, Brian's grandfather. We are towards the middle of the page. Ki Asa Rav Dimi. We were discussing, trying to figure out how one can nullify another person's witnesses. That was the last thing that we were discussing. Simply by me not liking your witness, I can't just nullify your witnesses. So the last thing that we had considered was the potential that the one side could have a second person together with him in order to nullify the opposite witness. So we wondered, well, that person would be involved in the testimony. So you can't testify about something that involves yourself in the case. So how could you do that? And we suggested that potentially the person wouldn't be actually testifying against the witnesses. He might be testifying against the witness's family and then thereby invalidating the witness. And that was the subject of argument between the Chachamim and Rabbi Meir about whether the testimony about the opposing witness's lineage could be considered separate of enough testimony that we could accept the testimony despite the fact that it will result in the witnesses that are testifying against you being nullified. So that's where we are. Chiyasar of Dimi, which is starting from the top, I guess, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 lines down. So Kiyasar Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael. He said the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Machlokas b'shtei kitei edim. De Rabbi Meir Savar Tzarech Levarer v'Rabbanan Savri Eino Tzarech Levarer. We're going to dust off an old machlokas that we had way back in Baba Basra. And at the end of Baba Basra, we talked about if somebody comes to court and overstates his case, meaning he claimed he only needs one set of witnesses in order to prove his case, but this fellow says, I have two sets of witnesses that will prove my case. When he makes that statement and he says that he has two sets, does he now have to bring the two sets? Right? In other words, can he just say I have two sets and then bring one? Or does he have to bring both? But if it was only one set of witnesses, if it was only one set of witnesses, for sure that the individual who is the subject of the lawsuit couldn't be able to nullify the opposing witnesses. It's because the opposing witnesses, there's two sets. So therefore, if he nullifies one of the two sets, it doesn't have a practical meaning on the case. It's only going to invalidate these witnesses for other cases going forward, right? Because there's two witnesses, like I said again, two sets of witnesses are testifying against him. He proves that one of the sets of witnesses are invalid. The other one is still going to be able to prove the case. So therefore, the one set of witnesses is not really germane to the topic of this case. So therefore, we're going to allow him to testify against the other set of witnesses. Amru lefanov Rav Ami v'Rav Asi. So Rav Ami and Rav Asi said before him, Ein sham elakas achas mahu. What would be the halacha, though, if there was only one set of witnesses testifying against the person? Well, Ein sham elakas achas. What do you mean if there's only one set of witnesses? We already started this dispute, this discussion with the statement. We are on 23b. We're about from the skinny lines, we're 3 skinny lines up. Aval bekas achas, but when it comes to only one set of witnesses, he can't nullify them. Because obviously, if he nullifies the one set of witnesses that are testifying against him, that's going to save him in the case, and therefore it's going to be a case where he's testifying about the outcome of his own case. Ella nimtes kashnia krovin opsulin mahu. Rather, what we mean is like this. Let's say the fellow testifies against the first set, and now the second set is found to be invalid or his relatives in some way. So Amar lehen, do we say to them, Kvar heidu edim harishonim? So do we say, so he said back to them, well, since at the time that he testified against the first set of witnesses, he was under the presumption that the second set of witnesses existed. So therefore he really wasn't testifying about his own case at that moment, and therefore his testimony can be accepted. So in the end, he nullifies, this fellow can nullify the first set of witnesses against himself, and then the second set of witnesses gets nullified separately, then that's going to save him, and that'll be acceptable. Ikadamri, there are those who say, Rav Ashi says, Kfar heidu edim harishonim, that it was Rav Ashi who said that the first witness's testimony was already accepted, and so therefore the testimony against the first witness is already accepted, so therefore that is going to be an acceptable thing to do. Nema beplugta de Rabbi v'Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. This argument about tzarich levarer, whether if a person overstates his claim, he says he's got more proof than he needs, whether he has to bring all the parts now that he claimed he had, that's subject to an argument between Rabbi and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, which we had in Maseches Baba Basra.
If he overcomes his claim, can't he get kicked out?
I'm sorry, who comes with the claim?
No, if he overdoes it.
So that's correct. Yeah. So if he claims, for example, we're going to see in a moment, let's say he claims that he has two sets of witnesses, he only has one, and he only brings one, then we're going to throw him out of court. Say, sorry, you said you had two. You obviously do not, and so therefore there's something suspicious. He's made his own case suspicious by claiming that he has something and then it not being available.
So that's what you mean when he overstates.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. So here's the argument between Rabbi and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Kamiflagi. The Tanya Werner Brisa. Habali don bishtar bechazak. A person comes to court and he has a contract and he has proof of his presence on the land for 3 years. Ni don bishtar divrei Rabbi. Rabbi says, all you have to do is bring the proof of the document, right? The proof of the document proves that he purchased the land. That's sufficient. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Nidon b'chazaka, we're going to use the testimony about the fact that he was on the land for 3 years. We asked about this machlokes. B'chazaka v'lo b'shtar. Why would he use the proof of being on the land for 3 years? The deed itself is the better proof. Right? So rather, ema af bechazaka. What's going on here is that, according to Rabbi Gamliel, if he said he has the deed and he's been staying there for 3 years, now the deed would have been sufficient proof by itself. But now that he's also stated that he's been there for 3 years, now he also has to bring proof of the fact that he's been there for 3 years as well. The kaimalon debetzarich levarer pligi. This argument is whether he has to prove all of the statements that he made now. So the answer is lo. No, that's not what's going on here. Aliba the Rabbi Gamliel, according to Rabbi Gamliel, kuliyam lo pligi. There's no argument at all. Keep pligi aliba the Rabbi Meir. We're arguing only within Rabbi Meir's opinion. The Rabbi Meir Kerebi. Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi that you don't have to be able to bring all of the that you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to prove all of the parts. For Rabbanan Amri Lach, the Rabbanan will say Ad Kan Lo Kama Rabbi. Rabbi doesn't hold this. Hasam El Bechazaka Demikoch Shtarak Asi. The reason why he has to bring the chazaka is because the chazaka comes from the strength of the contract. Now that he has the contract, he has to be able to prove that he has the chazaka as well, because those two things, that's the two parts to the same testimony, right? But these two sets of witnesses, are not related to each other at all, right? One set of witnesses says it, and then another set of witnesses, those are two unrelated sets. So afilu Rebbe moded de ein tzarich levarer, Rebbe might agree that in that case you don't need to bring a proof under those circumstances, even though.
What's the one you don't have to bring a proof for? You have two.
If I have two sets of witnesses, because the statement that I've got a contract and I've got the chazaka are two related claims, right? But if I have set of witnesses, I say I've got two sets of witnesses that can prove it. Set number one and set number two. Right. Set number one and set number two are not related. They don't depend on each other. So therefore, since they don't depend on each other, the fact is that if I don't bring one of the two sets, I haven't reduced my actual claim.
Right. Okay. So that's the claim itself that you have to keep.
That's exactly right. Okay. So now, fine. Ki asa Rabin, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. When Rabin came from Rabbi Yisrael, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Reisha be'edim psulin v'dayanin kesherin. He says the Reisha, which was the Reisha. He says that we're going to go on to Chaf Daled Amud Aleph now, right? So the beginning of the Mishnah is talking about where the witnesses are not valid and the judges are valid. So therefore, migo so this fellow comes in, he gives double testimony. He's testifying about both things. He says the witnesses are invalid and the judges are valid. Right? Migo de pasli edim pasli nami daini. So once he proved his claim that the witnesses are pasul, are invalid, so then he's also then going to be believed on the second part when he tries to invalidate the judges. Right? So again, he comes into court, he's got these judges and he's got these witnesses. Right. He claims that they're both no good. Your judge is no good and your witnesses are no good. Right. And then we actually prove that the witnesses are no good. So he says, since we've proven part of your statement, we're going to give you a little extra belief, a little believability, and also give you credibility about the judge being no good, despite the fact
does he have proof that the judge is not
he
good?
does not have proof. But nevertheless, now that we've already started to prove some of his claims, we're now giving him a little bit of extra believability. Yes. It could be, yes. Seifa, the end part of the Mishnah is b'dayanim psulin ve'edim ksherim, the other way around, right? He comes in and he says they're both no good, and now we prove that the judge is not valid and the witnesses are kosher. Demigo de pasli dainin, so we're going to believe him to invalidate the witnesses. Why? Because since he was truthful about the judge being invalid, pasli nami be'edim, we're going to believe him also to nullify the opposing witness, right? This is a new explanation for how he's allowed to, how we're giving him believability to discredit the opposing party's judge or witnesses. The answer is because he's already been partially truthful so far, so therefore we're going to give him extra believability. So
this makes the logistics of Sanhedrin very complicated. Usually here, for example, when there's a bet din, you go to whatever.
Well, that's the nice thing about it, right? If you've got an established beis din, and we've got a mumcha l'rabim, and it's a public court, and it's one that is accepted by all, then none of these kinds of invalidations are going to work.
So why did they allow this?
For it seems like they were doing it for in a city that didn't have an existing beis din, potentially, or for the sake of convenience, and they were all accepting it upon themselves, right? But it seems if the halacha is that if you're in a city where there's an established beis din, so then you can't choose to go to unestablished judges over the established court. If one of the parties says, let's go to the established beis din, then that's the way you go.
Was this Pesha?
It's like that. It's like a Pesha Asr, Pesha Hitir. It's the opposite. It's like Pesha Hitir, now we're going to give you extra believability.
Right.
We don't find anything else like it. I couldn't think of anything else that's similar to it, right? We're giving him extra believability. Since your first part of your claim is truthful, you're probably telling me the truth about the other part also. Okay, Maskif la Rava. So Rava asked the question on this. Bishlam amigo de pasli edim pasli nami daini. I understand that once we've nullified the witnesses, we're going to also nullify the judges because ika beidina achrini. Because why? We're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You've already been truthful about the witnesses being invalid. You're going to tell me the judge is not valid. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Why? Because you can always go to another judge anyway. There's always somebody else we can go to judge this case. Why not trust you about the judge? El amigo de pasli daini, pasli nami edim. But the second part of it is, you found out that you're right about that judge being no good, so now we're going to invalidate your witnesses. Va'edim tu leka. If you invalidate the other guy's witnesses, now you've ruined his entire case. He's got no other witnesses to bring. So that's going to ruin his whole case. We can't give the guy the benefit of the doubt and invalidate the witnesses and ruin the other guy's case. That seems a little bit too much. So Lo Tzricha says, no, here's the case. De'ika kas acheres. There is another, we're going to only allow this to happen in a situation where we know the other fellow has a second set of witnesses in his back pocket, right? He had another set. So he's invalidating the first set, and we let him do that. Why? Benefit of the doubt. Let's just go with the second set. That's what we're doing exactly. Now, haleka kasa cheres mai. What will be the halacha if he didn't have another set of witnesses? Hachinami dilo matzi pasli. You're right. Then we wouldn't be allowed to nullify the witnesses. That make you feel better, Brian? That makes it a little bit better, right?
I mean,
because we're not really nullifying, we're not ruining his case.
Right.
We're just telling him benefit of the doubt. Let's just go with the witnesses we've
but
got.
that's only if he has a second set of witnesses.
If he's got a set, if he doesn't, then we can't trust then we don't trust him. We don't trust the
first set of witnesses.
Then we do trust. We're going to trust the witnesses.
Oh, we
right?
do trust the witnesses.
If there's only one, we're going to trust those witnesses, right? Hainu derav dimi ika beinahu. So he says, okay, so Hainu derav dimi. So then that sounds like the same opinion as Rav Dimi's opinion at the end of the day. If there's only one set of witnesses, right? It's the same thing that we said before, that the person can testify about the other guy's witnesses as long as he's got a second set, right? We can bring another guy with me and testify about. Well, then it's the same thing. If there's two sets of witnesses, then we can knock off one set, allowing us to have the other. Basically, they're saying the same thing. No, ikabeinahu migu. The issue is that the migo, right? In other words, in the other time when Rav Dimi Ini was talking, he needed a second witness to come with him to nullify the other. This is simply, since we believed you about the judge, you by yourself can be judged, to nullify the other witnesses. That's the difference. Demar Savar Amrina Migo, Mar Savar Lo Amrina Migo. One says, we will add on this extra level of believability since you were already right about the first part of the thing you said. And the other one says, no such thing. We're going to need you to bring another witness in order to nullify it. Okay, so now, Gufa. So let's go back over something that we had mentioned before. What Reish Lakish said about Rabbi Meir, right? When Rabbi Meir, we had suggested Rabbi Meir something, and Reish Lakish was insulted by the Pek Kodesh, somebody who's had such a holy person could say such a thing. Chas v'sholem. So now, Amar Reish Lakish, Pek Kodesh Yomar Davar Zeh. So Tani Edo. So he is that we switched it in that circumstance that from what we were suggesting that Rabbi Meir said that a person can nullify the opposition's witnesses, and we changed it to be that he can nullify his opposing single witness. Ini, is that true? V'ha'amar ula haroa es reish lakish bebeis hamedrash ki'ilu oker harim v'tochnan zeh bazeh. How? That's such an odd way for Reish Lakish to talk. Anybody who's ever seen Reish Lakish in the Beis Medrash knows he would lift mountains and grind them up. What does that mean? They had a way of learning that was vicious, right? They would rip you apart. If you said something that wasn't logical or reasonable, they would tear you apart. They would right? They would say, "What's wrong with you?"
Remember not to go to that Beis Medrash.
But that's how they would learn. So therefore, it was surprising to hear Reish Lakish talk about Rabbi Meir with such reverence when that wasn't the way that it was done. Amar Ravina says, "V'alo kol haro Rabbi Meir bebeis hamedrash ki lo oker harei harim." And anybody who saw Rabbi Meir in the Beis Medrash, he was like, he was like somebody who would uproot mountains of mountains, v'tochnan zeh bazeh, and he would grind them together. So hachi kamar. So this he said, come and take a look and see how respectful the sages were for one another. So now we're going to bring other examples. Rebbe said that it's prohibited on Shabbos in order to wrap something that is cold, right? Because it's going to be potentially adding heat. That's a discussion over there in Masechah Shabbos. Hatmana, that is correct, Hatmana. So Amar Lefanav Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yishmael said, Rabbi Yossi said in front of him, Abba hitir lehatmin es hatzonin. He says, my father said it was acceptable to wrap up something that was cold. Amar Lei, Kvar Hora Zokin, he says, okay, I retract. If your father said so, then that's the way that it is.
Did he lie though?
No, he was telling the truth. He was telling, but the point is that see how much respect that he gave to Rabbi Yossi. Right. So Amar Rav Papa says, Borei Kamem Mechaben Zeh. Take a look and see how much honor they gave to each other. De'ilu Rabbi Yossi Kayim. If Rabbi Yossi was alive, Hayakof Kafuf V'Yoshef Lifnei Rebbe. He would have sat on the floor and listened to Rebbe as, like, he would have treated Rebbe like his Rebbe. But now that Rebbe Yossi isn't around, he was treating Rebbe with such Rebbe Yossi with respect. Even Rebbe was treating Rebbe Yossi with such great respect. Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi, Memoli Mokom Avosav, because Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yossi was filling his father's place. However, Hayakof, if Yosef Lifnei Rebbe, he was sitting on the floor in front of Rebbe and learning. V'ka'amar, and he said, Kvar Hora Zakein, and nevertheless Rebbe gave respect to Rabbi Yishmael's father, Rabbi Yossi, and said that the elder already ruled on this, and he gave him respect. Amar Rabbi Yeshaya, where do you see that? The pasuk says, "V'kach li shnei makalos le'echad karasi noam le'echad karasi chovalim." This is by in Zechariah. He says that he takes two staffs in order to lead the nation. One he called a graciousness, and one he called what do you call it? To attack, right? An attacker. So he says, Noam elu tamidechom sheberetz Yisrael. What are the two staffs? There's two different ways of learning. The staff of graciousness, that was the way that the Talmidei Chachamim ruled in Eretz Yisrael. Sheman imin zel ze behalacha. They were trying to understand each other. They would talk to each other. What do you mean by that? How do you understand that? And they would try to work it through until they understood it. Chovalim, the ones who would attack each other, elu tamidei Chachamim shebe Bavel. That was how they used to learn in Bavel. Shemechavlim ze behalacha. They would attack each other and try to attack each other's logic and reasoning in order to be able to come to the truth. It was a different style, right? One is more collaborative, and one was combative. V'yomer Eila Shnei B'nei Hayitzar Ha'omdim Ushnayim Zesim Aleha. These are the two children of the oil that were standing and the two olives that are upon it. Ushnei Zesim Aleha Yitzhar. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Elu Talmidei Chacham Sheveres Yisrael Shenochen Lazel Halacha Kishem and Zayis. The oil refers to the Talmidei Chacham Sheveres Yisrael, that they were like nice, smooth olive oil to each other. Ushnayim Zesim Aleha. And there were two olive trees by it. Elu Talmidei Chacham Bavel. These are the Talmidei Chacham in Bavel. Shemarurin Zela Zeb Halacha. They embittered each other with halacha. There was like war in there, like a kazayas, like an olive tree.
How do you bear someone?
That was the start. That was it. You go into base measures. Everybody's yelling at each other, giving it to each other, as we say in the modern in my school when we are dealing with issues that are difficult. We say we're going to be tough on the issues, but easy on the person, right? So, but you see that there's many times in the Gemara that they are harsh on each other. They yell and scream and they tell each other that you're crazy and all that kind of stuff.
And you're wrong. You're off.
Yes. And I lifted my eyes, and I saw Shtayim Nashim Yotzos. There were two women that were going up, Veruach Bekanfehem, and the wind was in their wings. V'lahena Knafayim Kekanfei Chasida, and they had wings that were like the pelican. I think it's the Chasida, it's like the stork or the pelican. One of the others, right? Stork or pelican. V'tisena Haifa Bein Hashemayim, and they lifted up this measure that was carrying this measurement cup that they were carrying and they lifted up into the air between Ben Hashemaim Ben Arts, between the heavens and the earth. Ve'omer el malach hadover bi, and I said to the angel, this is a prophecy that he's relating. Saw the angel that was speaking to me, Ana hema molichos esaifa. Where are they taking the measurement? V'yomer elai livnosla bayis be'eretz Shinar. They were building a house in the land of Shinar, which is Babylonia. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Zu chanufa v'gasas haruach. These two ladies that we're talking about here are talking about the two characteristics of what is it? Chanufa is like immodesty. It's not immodest, but it's like haughtiness, right? Chanufa, he says it's chonif maris. That's what a person who sees himself like he's really righteous.
Gasus Aruach is like,
and the other one is gasus aruach is haughtiness, haughtiness, right? So that's what they had. So these are the two bad characteristics. Sheyardu leBavel, right? And they went. These measurements went to Bavel. The gasus aruach leBavel nachis. What do you mean? Bavel got this haughtiness. Is that where Bavel went? In other words, this is what they're showing, that this is the characteristics of the Talmidei Chacham, the way that they learned, and it's indicated in the Navi that these kinds of characteristics would wind up in these lands. So you're telling me that haughtiness ended up in Bavel? There were 10 measurements of haughtiness that went down to the world. Tisha natla Elam v'achas kolam kulo. 9 of them went to Elam. Elam is Persia, right? So they went to Persia, and one of them for the rest of the entire world. Arrogance, yes, that's the word, right? There's a lot of arrogance. So the answer is in Lebavel Nachis Vishtarbuve Hu Dishtarbev Le'elam. So you're right. They went to Bavel, and then it wound up going from Bavel to Persia, right? Remember that the Persian Empire eventually was the outcome of the fallen Babylonian Empire. So they originally went to the haughtiness went to Babylonia, and then it was eventually the Persian Empire that took it over. Daikanami, it also says Dichsiv Livnos Labayis Be'er Shinar. It says that they were building a house in Shinar, Shmamina, and so you see Shinar is the land of Babylonia, so that's what we say. V'hamar mar, Simen Lagasas Ruach Anios, but isn't a symbol of haughtiness that there will be a lot of poverty. V'anios Lebavel Nochis. So, and is there poverty that has gone to Babylonia? It doesn't seem like, I guess, that there was a significant amount of... is that true? 1 second. I'm translating that properly. Yes, so that's what it is, right? If you could see that there's a lot of poverty, and poverty went to Bavel, so therefore that indicates that there's lots of haughtiness in Bavel. So, my anius, so we said, what does it mean when we say there's poverty? We don't mean literally monetary poverty. Anius Torah, we're saying that there's a poverty of a lack of Torah. So, Dichsiv Pasuk says, Achos lona katano v'shadayim ein law. We have a little sister that she does not physically develop with breasts. And Amar Rabbi Yochanan ze elam, and the breast is symbolized being able to transfer over sustenance from one to the other. So that it symbolizes the learning of Torah. And Rabbi Yochanan says this is referring to elam, shezachso lilmod v'lo zachso lilamed. This was the case of the Babylonians. This was the circumstances that when they were in when Daniel was in dealing with the Babylonian Empire, they were unable to spread Torah. Right, they were in exile, and Daniel was not able to get the base medrashes going and get everybody to learn. But when Ezra was in Persia, right, he was able to get everybody and reinvigorate everybody to do tshuva and start learning and come back.
But why was Daniel struggling?
Either it sounds like it was related to the land. Right? Maybe it was the environment that they were in, or they weren't serious. They hadn't completely done their repentance from the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So my Bavel, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Belula b'mikra, Belula b'mishnah, Belula b'talmud. What does it mean when the word Bavel? What is Bavel talking about? That land? That Bavel, Babylonia, is a place where they're all confused about their psukim, they're all confused about their mishnah, and they're all confused about their Talmud. Right? If you read the Gemara, it's confusing. Right? So you see, it's all very confusing. Right? It's not like straight learning through. Right? Yes, okay. Right, to mix things up. B'mechashchim hoshivani kimsei olam. Did I read that right? Make sure I get the kudos right. B'machashakim hoshivani kimsei olam. Rabbi Yirmiyah zeh talmuda shel Bavel. He says this Yirmiyah Navi complains that when the Jews were exiled into a place which was darkness like death. And so he says that's talking about Bavel, that ultimately the clarity of learning was complicated, and so things were dark.
Weren't you on laws of law at that time?
Well, you mean physically? You mean the land? Yes, that was a physical location, the lowest on earth. It's also
because when we were in Egypt,
spiritual.
When we were in Egypt. Eventually we got to laws of law, and then walking to the midbar.
Did we get that low with Babylonia? It was only 70 years, but we were definitely on a low level. Yes. Okay, says the Mishnah. Amar lo, neman alei abba, neman alei avicha. Let's say a person has a judge. And he says, you know what? I'm going to trust your father to be the judge, or we'll trust my father to be the judge. Ne'emanim alei shlosha roi bakar. He even says, I want 3 cattle ranchers to be our judges. Rabbi Meir Omer Yachol Lachzer. But Rabbi Meir says he could change his mind. And we quoted it before, right? Chacham said you can't change your mind. Let's say somebody owed his friend an oath. V'amar lo, dor li bechaye roshcha. He says, swear to me by the life of your head. Right? I'm not going to make you swear based in. You're going to swear anyway. Just swear right here. Swear it to me right here. Sorry, Meir Omer.
We're not allowed to swear. How can we?
There are circumstances where you're obligated to. Right? We're obligated. Generally speaking, we don't swear for no reason, but if it's a monetary case, there are situations and circumstances where you're obligated to. So Rabbi Meir says, Yochol lachzer bo, you can change your mind, not take the oath, and V'cham omer Yochol lachzer bo, you cannot change your mind. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Dimi, Breder of Nachman, Rav Dimi, the son of Nachman, says, Breder of Yosef, the son of Yosef, Kigon de kable Allah bechad. This circumstance we're talking about is, they didn't take this one fellow to be instead of a whole Beis Din. They just said they'll be like one of the judges, right? We'll take my father to be one of the 3 judges. Now the question is, who's the one making this offer? Is it the plaintiff and he's being generous, right? He's basically saying, I waive my right to a trial case. Let's just take care of it quickly with your father, right? So is that him? But if it was the defendant, right, and so since he is being generous, so he can't change his mind, right? Once he says, because if I came to you and I said, I know I owe you money, but it's forgiven. You owe me money, but it's forgiven. It's immediately forgiven, right? Because I said so. Right. So once I said, I'll accept this judge, I shouldn't be able to change my mind, or that's the argument. But if it was the other way around, it was the person who was the defendant, and he was the one saying, I'll go to court and we'll, maybe everyone would agree that he can change his mind, right? Rabbi Yochanan says, no, the other way around. The argument is on the person who is the defendant, whether he can change his mind. So now the question is, Iboilu, the question was like this. According to Rabbi Yochanan, is he saying that the defendant is able to change his mind, but everyone would agree that the plaintiff would not be allowed to change his mind?
Right.
Oh, Dilmore, maybe bein bazu machlokas. He's saying both cases, right? So that was a question mark. So Toshma, come and listen. Damar Rava. Rava says machlokas betein lecha. Rava says the argument is where I say I will give it to you. Meaning the defendant says it. But if it's the plaintiff and he's saying I forgive you, divrei hakol ein yochol lachzor bo. You cannot change your mind. So that means he's saying that the argument is only in the case of the defendant, not in the case of the plaintiff. So so fine, if we said Rabbi Yochanan, remember we said that the first opinion, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel said the machlokas was in the macholach. So who's the one who says the machlokas is in etein lecha, the defendant? That's Rabbi Yochanan. So if Rava is saying that the machlokas is in the defendant, but not in the plaintiff, so then if that's what Rabbi Yochanan holds, then we understand Rava is saying the same thing as Rabbi Yochanan. And that works out very nicely. But if Rabbi Yochanan holds that the argument is in both cases, we see clearly that Rava doesn't hold the argument is in both cases. Rava damar kaman. Then Rava is not holding like anybody. He's not holding like Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel because he holds that there is an argument with the defendant, and he isn't holding like Rabbi Yochanan because he holds there's no argument by the plaintiff. So then, how's it going to work? So the answer is not a problem. Rava taimed enough sheikam. Rava is giving his own reason, right? Could be the third opinion, right? Could have Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rabbi Shmuel who says that the argument is in the case where the plaintiff wants to change his mind, but the defendant can always change his mind. The other way to look at it is Rabbi Yochanan says that it's where the defendant can change his mind, but everybody agrees the plaintiff cannot change his mind. And then there's a third way to look at it, and everybody says that everybody can rescind, but that's also an argument on both sides. Maybe you could rescind, maybe you can't.
Who do we hold by in this case?
Wait till the end, right? We're going to come at the end. And we're going to ask that question. Who do we hold like? Eisvei Rav Acha bar Tachlifa l'Rava. So Rav Acha bar Tachlifa asks Rava the following question. Hayachayev l'chaveru shvua. Let's say a person owed his friend an oath. V'amar lo, and he says, Dor li b'chaye roshcha. Swear to me, this is from our Mishnah, right? Swear to me by your head. Rabbi Meir Omer yochel lachzor. Rabbi Meir says the guy can change his mind. And Chachamim Omrim, ein yochel lachzor. The Chachamim said he cannot change his mind. So now, my love be'oson hanishboyin v'lo mishalmin. We're on Chaf Dalet on my base. Thank you. My love be'oson hanishboyin v'lo mishalmin dehavale kemochol. Are we not talking about a circumstance where who's the one demanding the oath, right? The person demanding the oath is waiving his right to make me take the oath in the courts. So that usually is the plaintiff is demanding an oath from the defendant. And he's saying, swear to me that you don't owe me the money. And then the defendant has to say, I swear I don't owe you the money, and then he doesn't have to pay.
If he doesn't swear, that means
then he has to pay. That's correct. That's the purpose of the oath, right? To force the guy into admitting it rather than take a false oath.
Why would he, at that point,
Because he sees the guy's ready to do it, and he goes, oh no, he must not take it seriously. I rescind my offer, let's go to Basin and make you do it for real, right? That's why he would rescind, right? So now, so he says, isn't this the case? So that means that who's the one making the offer? The plaintiff is the one making the offer. So therefore, the argument seems to be in the circumstance where the plaintiff is making the offer. Now, according to what Rava just said, it's that you said that there's no argument with the case of where the defendant wants to rescind. So then, how are you going to explain? If the argument is where the defendant wants to rescind, which is what Rava said, then how are you going to explain this? This clearly seems to indicate in the Mishnah that the argument is where the plaintiff wants to rescind, because it's the case of the oath is always the plaintiff forcing the defendant to swear. So the answer is no, that's not what's going on here. Ba'oson heshbain v'notlin. This is a circumstance where the plaintiff is swearing and he's collecting, which makes him sort of the recipient of the right. He's not forgiving. He's the one claiming, right? He's not forgiving anything. He's claiming, meaning that he is. There's a circumstance where a person can swear and collect. In the Gemara in where was it? Bava Metzia, I think it was, where we have a conversation. Let's say there's a worker, and he works certain hours, and he goes to get paid, and the owner of the business can't remember if he paid him already or if he kept track of the hours. So the rule is that the worker can swear that he is correct about the hours, and he'll get paid. Why is that? Normally, you can't take money without proof. The answer is because there's reason to believe that the owner of the company didn't pay attention. That's something that's common. He forgot. He had all these other workers to worry about. He was worried about the profit and everything that was going on in the day. He didn't keep track. So therefore, it makes sense that the Rabbanan would, for the protection of the workers, give the workers that right to swear and collect. So whereas normally swearing and not paying is the normal circumstance, this is a case of swearing and collecting. So it's the reverse case.
What's the punishment for a false swear?
Sorry?
What's the punishment for a false swear?
Yeah. So that you can't give somebody malchus for a false oath because there's no action to it, right? The punishment would be bidei shemayim, would be heavenly court, right? Okay, so now Tana le Reisha. Now in the beginning it says Tana tola b'das. So if that's the case, then it's the exact same case as the first case, because you just said that if it's that according to the two cases are identical. The case of the plaintiff forget the case of the etein lecha, the defendant saying I'll forego my right to the court case, and also somebody saying I'll forego my right I'll swear now and collect my money, and the person will say I will forego my right to make you swear and baste it in order to collect. So those are similar, and if that's the case, why do you need two cases that are identical? A case of a court case and a case of an oath. Why are they not identical? So the answer is Tani tola b'das acher v'tani tola b'das atzmo. There is a difference between a court case and an oath case. Why? Because one is agreeing to rely upon a judge. The other is agreeing to rely upon yourself outside of a court. How so? To tzricha, we're going to need both cases. Why? De'itana tola b'das acherim. If this was a circumstance where he was accepting upon himself a judge that wasn't appropriate, b'halkam Rabbi Meir dematzi halderbe. That's why Rabbi Meir would say, I changed my mind. He would allow him to change his mind. Why? Because I didn't think that the court case could possibly come out against me. But now that I see that I got this judge who wasn't qualified, it looks like things are not going my way, I could change my mind. But that wasn't what I thought. In other words, I thought one thing and then I see it's coming a different way. I changed my mind. Mishum de lo gomer makni. And he could change his mind. Why? Because I didn't agree. I didn't certify that I was going to do whatever was said, because I sort of presumed I knew where this was going. Damer mi yemar de mizachile aval, because we say in the end, who's to say that I'm going to be the one who wins? Aval tola b'das atzmo. But when it comes to himself, he would agree to the Rabban. You can't back out. Why? Because who did you think you were? What did you think was going to happen? I will swear outside of court. So what was going to happen? You were going to swear. There's no possibility of it going a different way. You're the only person here. So therefore, whereas Rabbi Meir would say you can back out of a circumstance where it's a court case from an oath, he might agree with the Rabbanan. You can't back out. So the answer is no. He disagrees. He says he can back out in both circumstances.
Can I say something a little bit off?
Yes.
Because we're saying we do a shavua. Sorry.
Yep.
We're saying we do a shavua. Shavua is technically a testimony against myself a lot of the time, right? Or it's a testimony for myself. And we said before that we're not naaman, someone who testifies for themselves. Is a shavua distinct from a testimony?
A shavua is not exactly functioning in the form of a testimony, right? In the circumstance, let's say, for example, in a circumstance where I'm being accused and I want to not pay based on my shavua, what that basically is that if I had, let's say, Reuven is suing Shimon, okay, right, and Shimon says, I only owe you half, so now Shimon's got to swear. What's going on there is Reuven, if he had two witnesses, would actually be able to collect the money from Shimon.
Right.
But now that Reuven doesn't have two witnesses, he only has one witness. Now he goes to Shimon and says, I want you to pay. Shimon now has an oath to take. Shimon is not going to pay. Why isn't he going to pay? Because the testimony of the one witness isn't enough to make him pay. Right. So you can exempt yourself, but we want to prove it a little bit. Otherwise, how would there be one witness here? So we're going to make you take an oath to counter that one witness. That's how this is working, right?
And that won't be a testimony for yourself. That'd be more against
the other witness. Right. That's countering the other witness.
Or maybe Shimon paid the witness, just you play along.
Paying witnesses is a different story, right? We're going to presume everybody is being honest in this Gemara, right? We're not suggesting that the witnesses. Well, I mean, I guess maybe that could be what's going on because he is swearing and saying that it's not true what the witness is saying. So,
Do we find any of those in the Gemara?
yes, we're going to get into Makos. We're going to talk about all about circumstances where people are paying witnesses to testify falsely. But you got to wait about 80 days, 3 months or so, right? 80 days, not so far off. Yes. V'yash ma'inon beha. Now, if you're going to tell me that when it's the circumstance of the oath that they are going to argue and decide whether you can rescind or not rescind, beha kami rabbanon, that's the circumstance the rabbis say you can't rescind because what do you think was going to happen? You're the only one that's involved. So aval behahi. Ema module rabbanon the Rabbi Meir, but when it would be a court case that he would agree with Rabbi Meir that you could rescind, so tzricha, so therefore I need both cases to tell me that regardless of the fact that the two cases are the same, whether it's going to be the plaintiff or the person taking an oath, whichever way that it works, the bottom line is that we need both cases to be able to tell me both in the circumstance of a court case and in the case where it's an oath, the person can rescind, or according to the Chachamim, you cannot rescind. Okay, now, the second part of this is when can you rescind? When can you change your mind? So Reish Lakish says machlokas lifnei gmar din. The argument between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan is before the judge makes his pronouncement. Right? Before you listen to the court case and you hear the judge is asking all the dumb questions and you realize this is not going my way, I can say, forget it, I changed my mind, let's go to court. Aval liachar gmar din, but once the court case is settled, divrei hakol ein yachol lachzor, but you cannot change your mind after that point. For Rabbi Yochanan says, liachar gmar din machlokas, no. After the case is closed, that is where they argue and say you can rescind. Right? You don't have to go with it. Right? So, iboilu. So I asked
one case is like double jeopardy.
It's a little bit correct.
And then the other one, okay, interesting.
So now we ask the question: Liachar gemar din machlokas aval lifnei gemar din divrei hakol yachol lachzor bo. Are we saying that afterwards you can rescind, but before everyone agrees for sure you can rescind? Oh, Dilma bein bazu machlokas. Or they both suggest, or are they arguing in both cases? The one that says you can rescind, there's an argument about whether you can rescind after the court case is done, and there's also an argument whether you can rescind before the court case is done.
After judgment?
After judgment. That's what we said, right? That's according to Rabbi Yochanan says, even after judgment, they're arguing about whether you can rescind, right? Rabbi Meir still lets you rescind after the court case is done. Toshma, Dama Rava explains, Kibel of Karavu Pasol, let's say he accepted upon himself as a judge somebody's a relative or an invalid person. Lifnei gemar din yachol lachzor, beforehand, before the court case is complete, he can change his mind. Liachar gemar din, but afterwards, ein yachol lachzor, but he can't change his mind. So iyamar bishlam liachar gemar din machlokas. If you're going to tell me that the argument is after the gemar din aval lifnei gemar din divrei hakol yachol lachzor bo, but beforehand, that Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim are not arguing, and they say everybody agrees that you can change your mind beforehand. So Rava damar Rabbi Yochanan. So then Rava is holding like Rabbi Yochanan. That's Rabbi Yochanan's view that the argument is after the Gemar Din, and beforehand there's no argument, right? Rabbi Yochanan says beforehand everybody can for sure rescind, right? Va'aliba de Rabbanan, and he's holding according to the Rabbanan's viewpoint in this case, right? Rav is explaining that I hold like the Rabbanan that you cannot rescind that you can rescind afterward. You can rescind before, but you cannot rescind afterwards. However, if you're going to say that you can rescind either way, so machlokas machlokas, that is also an argument about rescinding beforehand. So Rava damar kaman. Then how does Rava hold? Because if it's both, then they're arguing in both circumstances. Then whatever the law, if you can rescind afterwards, you can rescind before. And if you couldn't rescind before, you couldn't rescind afterwards. It's the argument in both cases. El lav shmamino, we see from here, liachar gemar din machlokas, shmamino, that the argument is only after the court case is closed. Before the court case, everyone agrees, Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim agree, you can rescind, right? But afterwards, then they argue whether you can rescind or not. Sholach le Rav Nachman bar Rav le Rav Nachman. Now we ask you this question. So Rav Nachman bar Rav asks Rav Nachman the following question, bar Yaakov. Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu. Okay, Rabbi, teach us. Lifnei gemar din machlokas, o liachar gemar din. What's the halacha, right? Is there an argument, can you rescind, right? Is there an argument before the court case is closed or afterwards? The halacha k'divrei mi, and who's the halacha like? So shalach lei, so we answered it back, liachar gemar din machlokas, there is an argument between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim after the court case is already completed. The halacha k'divrei chacham, the halacha is like the Chachamim, that you cannot rescind once the law is set. Okay, so that's the argument, and they say you cannot rescind.
So, if you rescind in a case, according to the Manda Omer that says, like, you could afterwards.
That's Rabbi Meir, right? According to Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi
Meir.
Yochanan, yeah.
After the court case goes against you, then you could come back.
And
once you rescind,
that's it. No.
Once you rescind, you can't.
No, rescind means you go back, right? Rescind means that you take it back. I said I would use you as a judge. Changed my mind. I won't use you as a judge.
No, but it's to make a shavua. I want to make. This is what they're talking about, right?
Yeah. Well, once I've taken the oath, it's done. That's it. Gemar didn't.
No, but in the court case, I rescind it. I'm like, I'm going to take it. Then I rescind it. Then I lose. Then I could. You're telling me
if you rescind,
Rabbi Meir, I could take.
What you agreed to is to use this person as a judge. When you rescind, you've just canceled the court case.
Right.
Now we've got to go to a real Beis Din.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay,
rescind means that I'm going to now force you to go to a real Beis Din and get a judgment.
Oh, okay, fine.
Right? That's what rescind is. Okay? Ravashi Amar Hachi. Ravashi says that this was the question. Shalach lei. Betein lecha machlokas or b'mochel lecha machlokas. Which was the argument which was the argument about whether you could rescind? Was it the person who is the defendant who's paying the money, or is it the person who is the plaintiff who's supposed to be receiving the money, who's saying, "I'll forgive you. We can go with the non-court case." So v'halacha k'divrei, who's the halacha like? Shalach lehi, he answered it back. Be'etein lecha machlokas. The argument was in the circumstance where it was the defendant, and he's the one offering to go to court with obligate himself with a lesser court. V'halacha k'divrei the chachamim. The halacha is like the chachamim, that once he accepts that he's going to do that, he cannot rescind. Besura Masnu Hachi, that's how they taught it in Surah. In Pumbedisa Masnu Hachi, they taught it the following way in Pumbedisa. Amar Rabbi Chanina bar Shalmiya, Rabbi Chanina said in Shalmiya, the Rabbi Chanina, the son of Shalmiya, said, Shachu le mi bei Rav l'Shmuel. They sent from the yeshiva of Rav to Shmuel, Yilamdenu Rabbeinu lifnei Gemar din v'kanu miyado mai. Let's say it was before. Let's say we have a new case. Let's say he wants to rescind before the court case is done, but he made a kinyan promising. He made said I'm going to commit myself with the kinyan to whatever the outcome of this court case is. So now that he's made a kinyan, he's more engaged in this.
Kinyan mean?
An acquisition, right? Certifying. He hasn't just said I'm going to go with whatever the judge says. He's actually obligated himself with a gesture of certification that he's going to obligate himself. But it is before the Gemar Din. So now what? So my shalach lahu ein liachar kinyan kum. The answer is once there's a kinyan, that's the end of everything. Doesn't make a difference. Kinyan, right? If we're going to agree to something, and we basically it's like shaking on it, right? We're going to use this, then we write a contract. I agree, like a contract, right? We agree hereby by contract to abide by whatever this mediator says. Then you can't withdraw from that at all, right? Once that's agreed,
it's locked in this week.
That's correct. That's locking it in. Okay, so that's you get it in writing, as they say. Then that makes a difference. Okay, next Mishnah. Ve'elu eina psulin. These are people who are no good for being witnesses. Hamasachik bekuvia. People who play with dice. There's some kind of bones or whatever. Gamblers, right? V'hamalva beribis. People who lend with interest. Umafricha yonim. People who are pigeon racers or pigeon
who gamble on pigeons, basically.
Well, that's what we're going to discuss. What that means exactly. The sochrei shvius, people who sell the shemitah produce. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says, "Betchila hayu korin oson osvei shvius." At first, we call these people gatherers of shemitah produce. Misharabu hanasin. Once there became too many people forcing, as we'll explain what that means. Chazaru likros on sochrei shvius. We change our mind. We call them sellers of shemitah. Amar Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Huda says, "Emasai bisman she'ein la umnus." The Elahu. These people are only invalid if this is their whole profession. Their profession is doing something that is illegal. Aval yeshem umnus shalohu. But if they have another thing, and this is just like the gamble on the side, right? Guy bets on a football game, that doesn't make him pasoliedus, right?
You saw the Shemitah product?
We're going to discuss it. Yeah, potentially so, right?
That's like
It's an isser, right? It's an isser.
Yeah.
Why does someone buy a lottery ticket?
Right, if he buys a lottery ticket, that's not. But if a guy is a professional gambler, that's a different story.
Right.
Okay? Says the Gemara, Mesachi Bikuvya, Mike Ovid. What is the big deal? So the guy gambles. Why does that make him invalid for being a witness? Some Rami Bar Chama Rami explains we should have a asmachta, because this is what we call an asmachta. Remember, we go reintroduce the asmachta. An asmachta is where a person promises to pay, but he has no intention to pay. So what happens is the guy always thinks that he can win the gambling, right? Nobody goes gambling thinking they're going to lose, right? So he says, I'm going to play and I'm going to win. Right? That's like they do the shell game, right, on the streets of New York or whatever it is, and they make it look so easy, and then as soon as they've got you, then they trick you and they do all kinds of things and they beat you, right? The whole idea of it is to make you think you can win, and then you really can't. It's really cheating, right? So they make you think you can win, and then you can't. So therefore, since the person who's paying the money in, when you put your money in, you don't give the money to whoever's going to win the game. You think you're going to win. So therefore, when the guy who wins takes the money, he's taking your money without permission. It's stealing. Smachta lokanya. Since
you have a lot of witnesses watching.
I understand they're watching, but they're watching a person steal from me.
That's a specific type of gambling. It's not like gambling on a football game, right? Because gambling on a football game, you know.
Even still, no. Do I know? I think I'm going to win. I know more about football, so therefore I know I'm going to win the game. But when I lose, I feel like I got gypped. Potentially, the issue also is how fair the gambling is, right?
This is leaf naive, what you're talking about with where.
That's right. This sounds like it's a little bit more fixed.
But things that you're telling me that there's odds, that would be considered Geneva? Like I go play blackjack, that would be considered Geneva for the
potential. Well, that's what it seems like, right?
Nobody's forcing you to do these things.
No, it's not about that.
It's not
like,
right.
Do you have in mind that you're 100% going to win? What he's saying is it's Geneva because
you play poker, you have all the chicks all in. That was Geneva.
That's the question.
That's all. It could be it, right? It could be Geneva. I think I'm gonna. I look at my hand and I've got two pair. I think I'm gonna win.
Or a flush or whatever it is.
Right. I think I'm gonna win. So okay, right. So that's what's going on there.
Right.
So Rav Sheshes Amar Koki Hagavna Lava Asmachta. He says that's not what an asmachta is. Remember, we had this conversation with an asmachta is. An asmachta is when I say, I'll give you $1 million. I'm going to be at Minion tomorrow. I'm so sure I'll give you $1 million if I'm not there. Right? And then you're not there. That's an asmachta. That's an asmachta because I thought I had zero. When I told you the $1 million, I had zero intention of paying that.
Right.
I was only saying that in order to show you how sure I was. That's asmachta.
Right.
That's not the same thing as the gambling. Ella. So rather, the gambling is not a stealing thing.
Right.
Rather, what it is lefisha eina os asukin b'yeshuva she'olam. The problem is you are not productively employed. Right? You're not being productive. So that makes me question whether you're a stockbroker or somebody like that, whether that falls into this category. Like, what use are you to the world, right? Are you really helping create anything, build anything? No, you're just playing a game, right? Then that's what you're doing. So are you like... So that's what the problem is. My Beinahu, what's the difference between the two of them? Ika Beinahu, Digmar Umnusa Achrisi. The question is, let's say you've got some other job that you know how to do. So therefore, since you have some other job that you know how to do, if the issue is thievery, so then you're stealing no matter what, right? That's going to be no good. Right. But if the issue is
that you're not doing anything, you're doing something.
Right. I normally am a wonder. I build houses for the poor. It just happens to be that on the weekends I gamble and play cards. That doesn't mean that I have zero positive to society. That's how I relax.
At the same time, with that money, you can easily buy more tools.
So that's the issue
for your house, for your building.
Okay. So then. If he's got a job that's not like this, then they're fine. So So that means that the whole reason why the Mishnah is saying that there's a problem is because these people are not making they're not being productive for society. So kasha l'rami bar Chama. So that's going to be a problem, right? That's the end of the Mishnah says that, right? The end of the Mishnah says, right? The Mishnah explains that, right? It depends if you're productively, gainfully employed or not. So how is Rami Bar Chama, who says it's an asmachta issue, how does he understand this? Maybe you're going to say Rabbanan are arguing with Rabbi Yehuda, and right, because you look confused, Brian, right? The end of the Mishnah says if he's productively employed, then it's okay that you have this. But if the issue is stealing, who cares if you're productively employed? right? You're stealing.
Right.
So I'm both productively employed and a thief. I should be invalid to be a witness.
Right. No,
So therefore, this like, let's say the Chachamim argue with Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, Kol Malkum Shar Rabbi Yehuda Emasai Ubameh. Whenever you see the words Emasai Ubameh with Rabbi Yehuda in a Mishnah, Eino El Lefarish, he's not arguing. He's coming to explain. So that's what's going on here. Divrei Chachamim. So he's coming to explain the Divrei Chachamim. Rabbi Yochanan says, Emasai Lefarish Ubameh Lachlok. You're right about the Emasai, but the word ubameh is he is arguing. However, the Kuli Alma Emasai Lefarishu. In the end of the day, the Mishnah says Emasai, and that means that he's not arguing. So if that is the case, we're in Chaf Hamad Aleph. So therefore, we say that he is. That we say he's not arguing, he's explaining. So therefore, Gavra Karamis. So 1 second, what's your point? You're arguing. You're telling me that Rabbi Yochanan holds that that they're not arguing. Reish Lakish is not arguing. Maybe Rami Bar Chama holds that he is arguing. And that's how he holds it. Marsavar pligi, Marsavar lo pligi. Lo pligi. So you tell me that they're not arguing. V'hatanya, we have a brisa that supports Rabbi Chama's perspective. Bein sheyesh lo umnos, bein shalohu, bein she'ein lo umnos elohu. It doesn't matter whether this gambler has another job or he doesn't have another job. Harei ze apostle, he is invalid for being a witness. So hahi Rabbi Yehuda mishum Rabbi Tarfon he. That doesn't prove anything because that is Rabbi Yehuda, his opinion according to Rabbi Tarfon. Detanya, we want to brisa Rabbi Yehuda Omer mishum Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Tarfon. Cases like this. Two guys are standing on a street and they see this guy wandering down the street and he's got long hair. One guy says to his friend, that guy's a Nazir. And the guy says, him? There's no way he's a Nazir. He's not a Nazir. First guy says, if he's a Nazir, then I'm a Nazir. And the other guy says, if he's not a Nazir, I'm a Nazir. Let's go ask him. That's their bet, right? They're betting, right? Yeah. So therefore,
one has to become a Nazir.
Says Rabbi. So one of them's going to be Nazir. Rabbi Tarfon says neither of them are a Nazir. Right. Why? Because in order to be a Nazir, you've got to declare I am a Nazir, right? So therefore, right, by not declaring, you're not. It's like an asmachta.
But we say al-tanais, like if you read, I remember in Nazirim, you read, there's a bunch of al-tanais for Nazir. But you're saying because, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
You're saying because they have it in mind that they will actually...
I'm right. I'm so sure I'm right. So that's the point that Rabbi Yehuda's, this is Rabbi Tarfon's opinion, that according to the opinion that holds that, according to Rabbi Tarfon, that holds that that means that gambling would also be an asmachta case.
Right.
Which means that gambling is thievery. According to that viewpoint, then it doesn't matter whether you have another profession or not. No. But in our Mishnah seems to be holding that the problem is that you're not productively employed, not that you are stealing.
The Nazirim, do they have to go to court to become a Nazir?
No, you could do it just by making your declaration. Okay. Next case, we'll do another one while we're waiting for the rest of society here. Milva beribis. We are if a person loans with interest. Sama Rava says Lova beribis pasali, somebody who lends with ribis is somebody who borrows by paying interest is also puzzle for testimony. But our Mishnah says milva beribis. It says somebody who loans with ribis is not good. So which is it? Milva haba beribis. It is any loan that comes through what? It's a loan that comes through interest. Bar benitus ashidu be tresadi. Chad Omar Kami Didi Ozif Beribisa. So in Bar benitus, in his court, there were two witnesses that came. One said, I saw so and so lend with ribis. Chad Omar Ledidi Ozfi Ribusa. The guy lent me ribis. So now we have the same case again that we had before, where he's testifying about himself. Right?
Can't believe him.
So Pasle Rava Barbenitus. So Rava said Barbenitus is now exempt, is now nullified from being a witness because he's got two guys testifying against him that he lent with ribis. V'ha Rava hu da'amar lo v'beribis pasol. But 1 second, Rava is the one who says that a person who lends with ribis is a non-good witness. Who borrows with ribis is a non-good witness. Right. So when this person says, I borrowed with ribis from him, isn't he an invalid witness? Because he's taking about himself, saying about himself.
Because he's testifying against himself. Wait. He's testifying
about himself that I borrowed.
So we don't.
Oh, good. So he says, he goes v'havale Rasha. He becomes a Rasha v'atoram. Rasha. You can't receive him as a Rasha's witness. So Aid, so Rava Latame, Rava is going according to his own reason, as Brian said. Dama Rava, Adam, Karov Eitzel Atzmo, a person is related to himself. Vein Adam Mesim Atzmo Rosh, a person cannot be believed to take testimony about himself that he's wicked. Hahu Tavcha, there was once a butcher, De Ashtkach, Denafka Trifta Bimtusi Yadeh, they caught him, and he was selling treif meat. Okay, so Pasle Rav Nachman va'Avrei, Rav Nachman threw him out from being a butcher. He wasn't allowed to be a butcher anymore because he was secretly selling treif meat. Also, Rebbe Mazye v'Tofrei. So he came. Rebbe saw him that the guy was in mourning and he was growing his hair and his fingernails and he was just a mess. Savar Rav Nachman lakshuri. So Rav Nachman thought I can bring him back. Now he's clearly done tshuva. I can bring him back. Amari Rava. Rava says Dilma iarumi kamiram. How do you know? Right? He's just playing like he's done tshuva. Elamai takante. So okay, how do you know? What are you supposed to do? How are you going to know for sure that he did tshuva? So could Rav Idi Bar Avin, like Rav Idi Bar Avin says, number Rav Idi Bar Avin, hachoshid al treifo, somebody who is we're concerned that he's selling treif meat. Ein lo takana, he cannot fix his avera ad sheyelech lemakom she'ein makirno. So he's got to go to a place where nobody knows who he is. So he's not going to play games because he's got nothing that nobody's suspecting him. V'yachzer aveda b'davar chashuv. And he's got to show that he's not tempted to do the wrong thing because of money. How? He's going to return a valuable lost object. We see, because he could just keep it. If he returns a valuable lost object, sheyotzi treifa mitachas yado b'davar chashuv mishalo, or he's slaughtering his own meat and he realizes it's treif and he throws it out. We see he does that. So clearly he is clearly done tshuva because the opportunity to do the same avera to be, I guess, to use his position to his advantage to trick people, and he didn't do it again for monetary gain, and so we see that he is accepted. He is done tshuva. Okay, we'll stop here.
So basically, the butcher, the